Ladies and gentlemen, there is a moment, isn't there, when every part of you whispers to stop. Your muscles ache, your mind hesitates, and the world outside seems to plead for surrender. It is precisely in this moment that the subtle truth emerges. Exhaustion is not an enemy, it is a signal, a gentle indicator that you are on the edge of something profound. And this, right here, is why you must stay with me for the entirety of this journey, because what you discover in the midst of fatigue is far more valuable than comfort ever was. You see, tiredness is often a veil, a mirage that the mind drapes over the body. The body can endure far beyond what you imagine, but it is the mind that claims victory too early. When you force yourself to move, when you step past the whisper of rest, you awaken a deeper energy, a current of momentum that no complaint can resist. Each small action, each moment you choose motion over stillness compounds. Momentum is invisible, yet powerful. It is the quiet force that transforms ordinary effort into extraordinary results. Do not misunderstand this struggle. Pain, resistance, and weariness are not punishments. They are invitations. They are the universe's way of saying, you are alive and life is unfolding precisely at your edge. Embrace the heaviness, for in doing so, you discover the elasticity of your own spirit. The body complains because it has never been asked to dance this fully with life. The mind falters because it fears what it cannot control. But you, if you choose, can step forward anyway. Progress asks you to disregard immediate comfort. The world will always offer the seduction of ease, soft chairs, quiet hours, empty distractions. But ease is not evolution. Growth lies in persistence, in stepping beyond the siren call of rest, in moving forward when the voice inside demands pause. Focus not on the discomfort of now, but on the beauty of the horizon you are approaching. Let your purpose speak louder than your fatigue. Let it remind you why the journey is worth each strained step. There is an interplay, subtle and profound, between mind and body. The mind, quick to retreat, often misjudges the body's capacity. The body, if honored with attention and presence, carries more than the mind believes. When you force yourself to act, when you synchronize will and motion, fatigue becomes fluid and effort becomes a form of meditation. Energy, you see, is not a finite reservoir. It is a river flowing, responding to direction and focus. Engage with it intentionally, and the river will carry you farther than you imagined. Tiredness is, paradoxically, a teacher. It shows you where you resist life, where you cling to illusions of limitation. When you move despite exhaustion, you learn that limits are rarely real. They are projections of fear, caution, and habit. Every step you take beyond the point of giving up is a declaration. I am more than my tiredness, more than my doubts, more than the small voice that seeks to contain me. Victory is not in resting at the finish line. It is in enduring the struggle and in discovering that the struggle itself is transformative. Persistence transforms the ordinary into the extraordinary. Those who keep moving, those who refuse to yield to temporary weakness, are the ones who shape the landscape of life. They are the ones who awaken fully to their potential. The essence of living lies not in avoiding fatigue, but in transcending it, in dancing with it, in learning that the heart's fire burns brightest when the body and mind threaten to quench it. The next time you feel the whisper of surrender, the tug of comfort, the heaviness of weariness, remember this: your true strength is not revealed in ease, but in motion. The moment you force yourself to keep going, to take one more step, to breathe and act and exist fully, despite fatigue, you awaken the infinite within. You become a force that refuses to be limited, a testament to the power of persistence. And in that force, life bends to your courage, energy flows where it was blocked, and the tired soul discovers the freedom it had always sought. There is a curious thing about fatigue. It is often misunderstood. We feel it, we notice the heaviness in our limbs, the fog in our mind, and we immediately label it as a stopping point, a signal that we must rest, retreat, and yield. But what if this very fatigue is not the enemy we have imagined it to be? What if it is, in fact, a subtle teacher, a guide pointing toward the deeper capacities within us? The body, remarkable as it is, rarely reaches true exhaustion. The mind, however, is quick to dramatize its limitations, to project weakness where strength quietly exists. The first step, then, is to recognize that fatigue is as much a mental construct as it is a physical experience. It's an invitation to look closer, to understand the rhythm of effort and energy in a way we have often neglected. When you feel tired, pay attention not only to the sensation, but to the story your mind is telling you about it. The mind whispers, "Stop! You cannot go further, you are done." Yet the body responds differently when it is engaged in motion. Even the smallest effort, lifting a hand, taking a step, breathing more consciously, can awaken energy that was hidden under the weight of imagined limitation. Tiredness, then, is not a wall, but a veil, a thin film through which the reality of your potential quietly glimmers. Each moment of perceived weakness contains within it a latent opportunity to discover strength you did not know you possessed. The experience of fatigue is universal, yet its interpretation varies. Some people hear its whisper and stop, accepting the illusion of limitation as truth. Others pause, notice the sensation, and continue anyway, realizing that there is a subtle difference between signal and surrender. Fatigue signals the need for awareness, for recalibration, for mindfulness, not necessarily for retreat. To move in the presence of tiredness is to cultivate a profound skill, the skill of perceiving reality as it is, unclouded by the stories of weakness that the mind invents. It is to see energy not as a fixed resource, but as a dynamic flow that responds to action, attention, and intention. How often life presents moments that feel overwhelming, moments where the body or the mind cries out for pause. In these moments, the initial reaction is to resist, to cling to comfort, to retreat from effort. Yet, precisely at this edge, something remarkable happens. When you move, despite the sensation of fatigue, you encounter a different kind of energy. A subtle, almost invisible current that carries you further than you anticipated. Momentum, once engaged, becomes a companion, amplifying effort and transforming what seemed like unbearable strain into a rhythm of purposeful motion. Tiredness, then, is not a limit, but a threshold, a point at which ordinary effort is transformed into extraordinary capacity. The mind often exaggerates fatigue because it fears the unknown, because it prefers the familiar contours of rest over the unpredictable terrain of effort. Yet the body, in its quiet wisdom, knows that it can sustain more than the mind assumes. To force yourself to continue, to act, despite the whisper of surrender, is to teach the mind a new truth. Limits are negotiable. The body and the mind, when aligned in this way, form a partnership where energy flows not from avoidance of difficulty, but from engagement with it. The perception of tiredness diminishes not because the body becomes stronger instantly, but because the mind learns to reinterpret sensation as information rather than verdict. There is a deeper lesson in this. Fatigue exposes the tendency to over-identify with temporary discomfort, to treat passing sensations as permanent conditions. Each moment of weariness is transient. It rises and falls like the tide. If you wait for complete ease before acting, you will rarely move at all. But if you learn to step forward while tired, you discover that energy is not a static quantity to be hoarded, but a living force that grows in response to attention, courage, and motion. The act of moving through tiredness is itself regenerative. It reshapes perception, teaches patience, cultivates resilience, and expands the boundaries of what is possible. To understand the illusion of fatigue is to embrace a new relationship with effort and energy. It is to see tiredness not as a signal to stop, but as a guide to deeper engagement. Every time you choose to act, despite the weight pressing on you, you reveal the hidden capacities of the mind and body. you uncover a current of momentum, a rhythm of persistence, a strength that was always present, but only revealed when tested. In this way, fatigue becomes not a limitation, but a doorway into understanding that your true energy is measured not by comfort, but by the courage to continue, step by step, breath by breath, even when every part of you whispers to rest. The moment you accept this, you begin to move differently through life. You stop seeing exhaustion as a barrier and start seeing it as a mirror, reflecting back the depth of your untapped potential. The veil lifts, and what once seemed impossible becomes not only possible but natural. And in this understanding, the first keynote of forcing yourself to keep going, even when tired, transforms from an abstract idea into lived, breathing experience, a lesson in strength, presence, and the boundless resilience of the human spirit. Momentum is a quiet force, subtle yet profound, and it is often misunderstood. We imagine progress as a grand, dramatic leap, as though one extraordinary effort alone defines our path. But in truth, it is not the isolated acts that shape our lives. It is the accumulation of small, consistent steps taken over time. Each choice to persist, each decision to move when it feels easier to stop, contributes to a growing current. Momentum is born not from perfection, but from persistence. It is invisible, yet undeniable, carrying you forward in ways that the mind cannot always perceive in the moment. The moment you recognize this, the way you approach effort, struggle, and even exhaustion transforms completely. Consider how a river flows. At first, a tiny stream appears insignificant, almost powerless. Yet, with each addition of water, each small influx, the stream gains strength, carving its path through stone and earth. So too does momentum in life. Every action, no matter how small or seemingly trivial, adds to the current. The act of getting up when your body wants to stay down, of taking one more step when fatigue tempts you to pause, is like adding another droplet to the river. Eventually, what was once a hesitant trickle becomes a force capable of reshaping landscapes. Your landscape, your circumstances, your very being. Momentum has a subtle way of teaching us that the perception of effort diminishes once the current is engaged. The first steps are always the hardest. There is resistance in the mind, a clinging to comfort, a whisper that says, "You have done enough, rest now." But each step beyond that resistance carries you further than the last. Each small decision to act creates its own energy, building a self-sustaining rhythm. You discover almost miraculously that what once seemed impossible becomes natural, even effortless. This is the principle of momentum. It is self-reinforcing. The act of moving begets more movement. The courage to persist strengthens the ability to persist further. And gradually, the flow of progress becomes inevitable. The mind, accustomed to immediate feedback and clear markers of achievement, often underestimates this force. It wants to see results instantly, and when results are not immediate, doubt arises. But momentum is not about instant gratification. It is a slow, invisible accumulation of effort, an unfolding that only becomes visible in retrospect. It is the hidden engine behind every great accomplishment, the quiet companion to every person who refuses to surrender to temporary difficulty. When you learn to trust in this process, to act consistently without needing constant validation, you tap into a power that is far greater than any single burst of energy or motivation. Persistence in the face of resistance is the key to unlocking momentum. It is not enough to act only when you feel inspired. Inspiration alone is fleeting. Action, repeated consistently, is what builds the current. Even small actions matter. Writing a single paragraph when the mind says stop, taking one extra step when the body protests, showing up quietly each day for your goals, these accumulate like invisible threads, weaving a fabric of momentum that carries you forward. Momentum is patient, but it rewards those who persist. and it punishes inertia, showing that life itself responds to motion rather than hesitation. There is also a profound lesson here about trust. To engage momentum fully, you must surrender to the process. You must act without needing to see the entire path, without knowing the full outcome. Each step reinforces the current, each movement strengthens the flow, and eventually the energy you have cultivated becomes unstoppable. It is a rhythm that emerges naturally when you choose to move consistently, when you refuse to be deterred by discomfort, fatigue, or doubt. The river flows because it moves, not because it pauses to question itself. So too, does your momentum grow as long as you continue to act? Momentum transforms not only outcomes but perception. As you move forward, what once seemed heavy or impossible begins to feel lighter. Effort, once painful, becomes a familiar rhythm. Challenges, instead of stopping you, are met with the force of accumulated energy, carrying you through rather than blocking your path. You begin to see the truth. The path itself, when traversed persistently, generates the strength, clarity, and courage you seek. Momentum is not merely a result of action, it is a state of being, a force that reveals the latent power within every moment of persistence. When you understand and harness momentum, you realize that life rewards the consistent, the steady, and the persistent far more than it does the sporadic bursts of energy. It is not the giant leaps, but the small, deliberate steps, repeated over time, that create unstoppable force. Each act of moving forward, even when tired, adds to the current that carries you. And in this way, momentum becomes your ally, your invisible companion, transforming ordinary effort into extraordinary growth and teaching that the journey itself is the source of enduring strength, not merely the destination. There is a subtle truth about struggle that we often overlook. It is not a punishment, not a sign of failure, but a necessary companion on the path of growth. Life does not present difficulty to break us. It presents it to awaken us. Every moment of resistance, every point where effort seems almost unbearable, carries with it an opportunity to discover strength, clarity, and resilience that would otherwise remain hidden. To embrace the struggle is to step fully into life, to acknowledge that growth is not a gentle unfolding, but a process that tests the limits of body, mind, and spirit. When we feel challenged, our first instinct is often to avoid, to resist, to seek comfort. Yet in avoiding struggle, we also avoid the lessons embedded within it. There is a rhythm to hardship, a pulse that calls us to engage rather than recoil. Each moment of resistance is an invitation to observe ourselves, to see how we respond under pressure, and to recognize the layers of strength that lie dormant. Struggle is not an obstacle. It is a mirror reflecting our potential. By leaning into it, by moving forward, even when it would be easier to stop, we align ourselves with a deeper current of life that rewards persistence and courage. Consider the way the strongest trees grow, not in calm, sheltered fields, but in windswept forests where storms test their roots. The bending and straining of branches against force builds resilience. Similarly, human growth requires the friction of challenge. The mind and body, when untested, remain comfortable but unformed. Only through engagement with difficulty do we develop endurance, wisdom, and the subtle confidence that comes from knowing we can meet life as it is. Struggle is the crucible in which our capabilities are forged, the heat that tempers our resolve, and the weight that strengthens our spirit. There is also a paradox inherent in struggle. The very resistance that feels heavy and oppressive is what produces the most profound energy. Fatigue, frustration, and tension signal that the body and mind are being pushed, that they are being called to transcend ordinary limits. To retreat in the face of these signals is to squander the opportunity to cultivate deeper capacity. But to move through them is to awaken a force within oneself that can only be discovered when tested. The pain of effort is transient, but the strength it cultivates endures. Each moment of struggle, when embraced rather than resisted, becomes a building block for resilience and self-mastery. Struggle also teaches a subtle form of surrender, not the surrender of quitting, but the surrender of control over outcomes. It reminds us that life is not always predictable, that effort does not always yield immediate reward, and that growth often occurs beneath the surface, unseen. When we accept struggle as part of the natural rhythm of life, we free ourselves from the illusion that comfort is the measure of success. We begin to see that true accomplishment arises from persistence, from moving steadily forward even when the path is arduous and the end is uncertain. This way, struggle becomes a teacher, guiding us toward a deeper understanding of patience, humility, and the art of presence. There is also a psychological dimension to embracing struggle. The mind is prone to fear, to imagining limits that do not exist. It whispers doubts, magnifies challenges, and convinces us that resistance is unbearable. Yet by confronting struggle directly, by acting despite fear and discomfort, we teach the mind a new language. We show it that limitations are often illusions, that perseverance is possible even when it feels unlikely. The repeated experience of moving through difficulty rewires perception, creating a subtle confidence that is unshakable. Strength, once discovered in struggle, becomes a resource that can be drawn upon in every area of life. The act of embracing struggle transforms our relationship with life itself. It allows us to participate fully in the unfolding of existence rather than retreating to the safety of avoidance. Each challenge met, each moment endured, becomes a testament to the capacity of the human spirit. The tension of struggle, once feared, becomes a source of energy and focus. The resistance that once threatened to stop us now guides us, shapes us, and propels us forward. In this sense, struggle is not an interruption to life. It is life in its most vivid, demanding, and transformative form. To fully embrace struggle is to understand that growth is not a gentle progression, but a dynamic, often uncomfortable process. It is to see challenge as an ally rather than an enemy, to recognize that resistance is a signal of opportunity rather than limitation. When we move forward in the presence of struggle, we awaken capacities that are hidden during ease, cultivate resilience that is forged only under pressure, and engage with life in a way that is fully alive, fully present, and fully empowered. In the dance of struggle, we discover not only who we are, but who we are capable of becoming, and it is through this engagement that transformation is born. There is a quiet, often overlooked truth about real progress. It requires stepping beyond the comfort of immediate ease. The world offers many lures, soft chairs, warm beds, moments of distraction, and the seductive call of pause. These are not enemies, nor are they inherently wrong, but they are tests of resolve. Comfort tempts us because it feels safe, familiar, and effortless. Yet if we allow ourselves to be guided solely by the pursuit of ease, we trade growth for stagnation, potential for the fleeting pleasure of rest. True advancement, the kind that shapes character, skill, and destiny, exists beyond this pull. It lies in the act of moving forward even when every fiber of your being whispers to stay put. Immediate comfort is a clever illusion. It whispers that safety is progress, that avoidance is preservation, that stillness is wisdom. The body, ever eager for reprieve, and the mind, quick to imagine limits, conspire to make this illusion convincing. Yet life, in its essence, unfolds not in stillness, but in motion. Growth demands engagement with what is uncomfortable, what stretches capacity, what challenges patience and persistence. The moment you push past the temptation to rest, the moment you prioritize the path over temporary ease, you begin to access a deeper energy, You realize that comfort, while seductive, is rarely transformative. It maintains the familiar, but it does not expand it. Consider the rhythm of effort. The first steps beyond comfort feel heavy, awkward, and almost painful. Muscles complain. The mind doubts, and fatigue seems insurmountable. Yet each deliberate motion carries within it a subtle shift. With every step past the edge of ease, the body and mind recalibrate, discovering reserves of strength previously hidden. This is the paradox. Moving beyond comfort initially feels like strain, but it generates momentum, energy, and resilience that cannot be found in moments of ease. The act of forcing oneself forward transforms what once seemed difficult into something natural, and the mind learns that limitations are often imagined rather than real. The pursuit of immediate comfort also diminishes our awareness of time, effort, and potential. When we allow rest or avoidance to dominate, we settle for less than we are capable of. Life, in its continuous unfolding, does not wait for readiness, nor does it bend to the desire for ease. Each opportunity to act, each challenge presented, requires engagement. By stepping beyond comfort, we honor the flow of life rather than attempting to manipulate it according to our preferences. We learn to act in harmony with the unfolding of circumstance rather than resisting it out of fear or fatigue. In this way, discomfort becomes a teacher, urging us toward fuller participation in the process of growth. The mind, conditioned to value comfort over challenge, often misunderstands this principle. It interprets the urge to pause as wisdom, the desire to retreat as prudence, and the resistance to effort as limitation. Yet, the deeper intelligence of the body and the subtle force of momentum know differently. They respond not to hesitation, but to deliberate action. By forcing yourself to act beyond the immediate call of comfort, you align mind and body with a larger current of potential. You learn that effort, when sustained and intentional, produces energy rather than drains it, and that each step forward, even when arduous, is a step into a stronger, more capable version of yourself. Detachment from comfort also fosters clarity. When the mind is not dominated by the desire for ease, it can perceive opportunities, solutions, and pathways that were previously hidden. Discomfort sharpens focus. Resistance hones attention. By choosing action over ease, you cultivate a form of awareness that thrives in presence and engagement rather than passivity. You discover that true satisfaction comes not from the absence of strain, but from the mastery and transformation that arise when you move deliberately through challenge. The energy gained through persistence far outweighs the temporary relief offered by avoidance. Moving beyond comfort is a declaration of intent. It is a quiet statement to oneself and the universe that you value growth over convenience, persistence over surrender, and potential over ease. This choice, repeated moment by moment, shapes character, builds resilience, and cultivates a force of will that becomes unstoppable. Each deliberate act of motion, each refusal to be ruled by comfort, compounds into the momentum of achievement and self-mastery. In the dance between desire for ease and the pull of purpose, choosing purpose consistently strengthens not only action, but the self itself. Detaching from immediate comfort is not merely a physical act. It is a profound mental and spiritual discipline. It teaches endurance, cultivates resilience, and aligns intention with action. It reveals the latent capacity of the human spirit to transcend transient weakness and embrace the full spectrum of possibility. The path of progress demands this courage, this willingness to step forward when it feels easier to stay still. In this act, in the decision to prioritize growth over ease, the individual discovers energy, clarity, and strength that are inaccessible in comfort, and the journey itself becomes the source of transformation. There is a profound difference between focusing on discomfort and focusing on purpose, and it is this distinction that defines whether fatigue becomes a limit or a catalyst. When exhaustion sets in, It is easy to fixate on the sensation itself, the heaviness in your limbs, the dull ache in your mind, the voice that whispers to stop. Yet when your attention shifts from pain to purpose, something remarkable happens. The discomfort becomes secondary, almost irrelevant, because the meaning of your actions begins to outweigh the immediacy of fatigue. Purpose is not abstract. It is the force that transforms effort into energy and struggle into direction. Without it, even small tasks feel insurmountable, but with it, even the most daunting challenge becomes a threshold to be crossed rather than a wall to be feared. To focus on purpose is to align each movement, each choice, with a greater reason that transcends immediate sensation. When the mind is absorbed in meaning, it no longer registers tiredness as a barrier, but as a signal that something valuable is happening. Pain becomes a companion in a larger journey, a reminder that you are engaged in an act of significance rather than a meaningless exertion. This is the paradox of effort. When anchored in purpose, what once felt exhausting becomes energizing, because energy is drawn not from comfort, but from the awareness of contributing to something larger than oneself. Fatigue transforms from an enemy into a guide, showing where attention and resolve are needed most. Purpose also reshapes perception of time and endurance. A person acting without focus experiences minutes as long, effort as heavy, and challenge as endless. But a person driven by meaning perceives the same moments differently. Each step, each repetition, each breath is part of a coherent narrative, a story in which every motion contributes to the outcome they desire. Purpose reframes the journey, allowing the individual to move through difficulty with a quiet, steady determination. The body and mind, when guided by significance rather than whim, discover reserves of energy that are otherwise hidden under the weight of distraction and complaint. The fatigue is still present, but it no longer commands attention. The meaning of the task commands it instead. The mind, when unanchored, magnifies fatigue because it lacks a framework through which to interpret effort. It sees only resistance, not growth, only weight, not direction. Purpose provides that framework. It is the lens through which all experience is interpreted, turning obstacles into lessons, delay into patience, and struggle into progress. By holding the greater goal clearly in view, the mind is quieted, doubts lose their power, and energy flows toward action rather than away into hesitation. This is why those who succeed against the heaviest odds often appear tireless. Their strength is not merely physical, but a focused attention that channels effort toward meaningful ends. There is also a subtle interplay between purpose and motivation. Motivation, left alone, is fleeting. It arises and fades with circumstances, moods of the body. Purpose, however, is deeper. It is enduring. When you act from purpose, your effort does not depend on how you feel at the moment. You move even when tired, not because the path is easy or pleasant, but because the end toward which you strive matters more than temporary discomfort. This internal orientation to meaning creates a form of self-sustaining energy, a quiet but unshakable force that pushes you beyond what you thought were limits. The physical body may ache, the mind may whisper doubt, yet the current of purpose carries both forward. Purpose also fosters clarity in action. When every effort is aligned with meaning, indecision diminishes. The question shifts from, can I endure this, to does this move me closer to what matters? The focus is no longer on the sensation of fatigue, but on the trajectory of effort. This mental realignment is transformative. It changes how the body responds, how the mind interprets challenge, and how the spirit engages with adversity. Each step taken with purpose becomes easier than one taken in aimless motion, not because the physical challenge is reduced, but because the weight of significance transforms the experience of effort itself. Focusing on purpose is a form of liberation. It frees you from the tyranny of fleeting sensation, from the constant negotiation with fatigue and discomfort. Energy is no longer squandered on internal debate or resistance. It flows directly into action. You learn to trust the process, to trust the capacity of the body and mind to meet challenges, and to trust that persistence in meaningful endeavor yields growth that is invisible in the moment but undeniable in retrospect. Each act becomes part of a coherent whole, and the momentum of purpose sustains you beyond the limits imagined by the mind alone. Focusing on purpose rather than pain transforms every step into a choice, every effort into an investment, and every moment of fatigue into a signal that meaningful growth is occurring. The struggle does not vanish, nor does exhaustion, but they are reframed. They become indicators that you are moving in alignment with what truly matters, guiding you forward rather than holding you back. By anchoring action in purpose, the tired body and hesitant mind find direction, energy, and persistence. And the individual discovers that the power to keep going is always greater than the temporary force of fatigue. There is a remarkable dialogue that exists between the mind and the body, one that we often fail to notice because it is subtle and continuous. The mind speaks quickly, interpreting sensations, assigning limits, and drawing conclusions about what is possible or impossible. The body responds more slowly. Its capacity is often underestimated by the mind's projections. When you feel tired, it is usually the mind that demands surrender first, whispering warnings, fabricating barriers, and exaggerating weakness. The body, if fully engaged and consciously directed, frequently has more strength than the mind believes. To force yourself to keep going is to teach the mind a new language, to guide it through the rhythm and resilience of the body, and to align these two forces in a harmonious current of energy. The mind is inherently protective. It interprets discomfort as danger and fatigue as signal to stop. This mechanism served humans well in the past, ensuring survival when overexertion could be fatal. Today, however, the mind often miscalculates the demands of growth and the capabilities of the body. The mind stops prematurely, mistaking temporary tension for true limitation. The body, when fully directed, can endure far beyond this threshold. Understanding this distinction is crucial. The act of persistence is not simply a test of physical endurance. It is an exercise in teaching the mind to trust the body, to realize that energy can be expanded through attention, will, and deliberate action. Each step taken, despite the mind's hesitation, reshapes this dialogue. The mind observes that its predictions of limitation were exaggerated, that its forecasts of exhaustion were incomplete, and that the body is capable of sustaining far more than imagined. With each deliberate motion, the internal conversation changes. The mind begins to trust that action, even in the presence of fatigue, does not necessarily lead to collapse, that energy is not a finite resource, and that effort produces flow rather than depletion. The alignment of mind and body is therefore not automatic. It is cultivated through repeated engagement, through persistence in the face of the mind's resistance. The body, too, responds to this partnership. When the mind and body are aligned, movement becomes less burdensome, effort more fluid, and energy more accessible. Fatigue is still felt, but it is no longer the commanding voice that dictates action. Instead, it becomes an indicator of focus, a gauge for attention, and a guide for pacing. The rhythm of motion, synchronized with deliberate thought and conscious intention, creates a current of sustained energy. The dialogue between mind and body transforms from conflict to cooperation, and the sensation of tiredness becomes manageable, secondary to the forward motion generated by aligned intention. The mind-body dialogue also reveals the subtle interplay of perception and reality. Often, what we interpret as weakness is simply unfamiliarity with sustained effort. The mind exaggerates limitation because it anticipates pain, discomfort, and resistance. By acting despite these anticipations, by guiding the mind through the natural rhythm of the body, We teach the mind to distinguish between actual limitation and imagined resistance. Each time we move forward when the mind protests, we provide evidence that endurance is possible, that fatigue is temporary, and that effort itself generates energy rather than consuming it entirely. This recalibration is transformative, reshaping perception and expanding capacity. There is a spiritual dimension to this dialogue as well. The mind's insistence on stopping reflects attachment to comfort, control, and predictability, while the body's latent strength represents potential, resilience, and adaptability. When these forces are brought into harmony, action becomes a meditation, fatigue becomes an observation, and persistence becomes a practice of presence. By consciously leading the mind through the experience of the body, we cultivate awareness of our inner strength and develop the capacity to act from a place of aligned clarity rather than reactionary hesitation. This relationship between mind and body also teaches patience and insight. The mind is often impatient, seeking immediate gratification or relief from discomfort. The body, however, responds to consistent attention and deliberate engagement. When we respect the tempo of the body while guiding the mind, we discover that energy is cultivated through sustained effort, not instantaneous bursts. The body becomes a teacher. The mind becomes a student, and together they reveal that the threshold of endurance is far beyond a momentary resistance imposed by mental doubt. Understanding and mastering the mind-body dialogue is essential for persistence. It is what allows a person to continue when tired, to act when discouraged, and to push beyond perceived limits. The mind will always whisper of surrender, but the body carries the capacity to sustain motion, to cultivate energy, and to reveal hidden reserves. By consciously guiding the mind through the natural rhythms and resilience of the body, we align thought with action, perception with reality, and intention with motion. In this harmony, fatigue becomes a guide rather than a barrier, and the capacity to keep going emerges not from sheer will alone, but from the collaborative intelligence of mind and body working in unison. Energy is often misunderstood as something finite, something that can be measured, stored, and depleted like a reservoir. Yet when you observe life closely, you discover that energy is not a static commodity. It is a flow, a dynamic current that responds to attention, intention, and action. The sensation of tiredness, the feeling of depletion, is rarely the full reality of your capacity. It is a perception, often magnified by the mind, that interprets temporary strain as an absolute limit. When you learn to cultivate energy deliberately, to engage with it consciously rather than passively, you discover that it expands in response to focus, persistence, and presence. Energy is not something you expend, it is something you generate. Consider the difference between passive and active engagement. Passive living, waiting for motivation, seeking comfort, avoiding challenge, creates the illusion that energy is scarce. Every task feels heavy, every movement burdensome, every choice exhausting. Active engagement, however, shifts the paradigm. When you act intentionally, when you move with purpose and presence, energy responds. It rises to meet effort. The act of doing, paradoxically, produces vitality rather than consuming it entirely. Fatigue is still experienced, but it becomes a signal of engagement rather than a verdict of incapacity. The more you participate consciously in the flow of life, the more energy manifests in response to your attention. Energy is also cultivated through rhythm. The body responds to patterns, to repetition, and to deliberate motion. The mind, when aligned with these rhythms, amplifies the effect. Each step forward, each deliberate breath, each act of persistence sends a signal that energy is available, that potential is not exhausted, and that action itself can generate strength. Momentum, when combined with focus, becomes a conduit for energy. What once seemed draining begins to feel empowering because effort itself, has the capacity to generate vitality. The perception of depletion is replaced by the experience of flow, and tiredness becomes a threshold rather than a barrier. The cultivation of energy is closely tied to attention. Where you place your focus, energy follows. Dwelling on fatigue, imagining weakness, and fearing exhaustion concentrates energy on limitation. Focusing on action, purpose, and presence redirects energy toward creation, effort, and motion. This is a subtle but profound principle. Energy is not lost by movement. It is activated by intention. The more deliberate and mindful your engagement, the more the internal current strengthens. The mind and body become conduits for a force that was always present, yet hidden beneath distraction, doubt, and habitual resistance. There is also a psychological dimension to energy as a flow. The mind often misinterprets tension and fatigue as permanent depletion, as a signal to stop. Yet these sensations are transient. They arise, peak, and fade. By observing them without surrendering to their demand for retreat, you tap into a deeper reservoir of capacity. The act of moving through temporary strain teaches the mind a critical lesson. Energy is not dictated by momentary sensation, but by attention, focus, and engagement. Fatigue becomes informational rather than limiting. It shows where focus is needed, where effort can be directed, and where the current of persistence is already in motion. Energy as a flow also requires trust in the process. When you act consistently, even in the presence of tiredness, you discover that reserves appear in unexpected ways. Strength emerges not only from physical preparation, but from the continuous practice of action itself. Each movement, each effort reinforces the current, and the accumulated effect is greater than any single burst of effort could achieve. What seemed like limitation is gradually revealed as a threshold to pass, a place where latent energy resides, waiting to be activated by persistence and presence. Energy expands when it is intentionally aligned with purpose. Actions without meaning dissipate vitality. Effort without direction feels draining. But when movement is guided by purpose, every exertion is amplified. Energy flows not only from the body, but from the mind and spirit working in harmony. The act of forcing oneself to continue, even when tired, taps into this dynamic current. Fatigue is transformed from an enemy into a signpost, a marker that you are engaged, alive, and generating the force that carries you forward. Understanding energy as a flow transforms the relationship with tiredness, struggle, and persistence. It teaches that limits are often perceptions rather than facts, that effort itself can generate vitality, and that movement, intention, and presence are the keys to sustaining action. By engaging deliberately, aligning with purpose, and trusting the natural rhythm of energy, one discovers that the current is inexhaustible when properly directed. The tired body and mind are not the end of possibility. They are the starting point of flow, the gateway to vitality, and the vehicle through which persistence becomes a lived, embodied reality. Energy, in this sense, is not a finite reservoir to guard, but a living current to engage with, cultivate, and direct. Each step forward, each act of persistence becomes a reinforcement of that current. Fatigue is experienced, yes, but it does not dictate cessation. Instead, it invites deeper engagement, offering an opportunity to generate strength through motion, clarity through effort, and momentum through sustained action. When you understand energy in this way, exhaustion becomes a signal rather than a boundary. And the capacity to keep going emerges naturally from the alignment of body, mind, and purpose. There is a profound truth hidden in the act of persistence. The capacity to keep going is rarely discovered in moments of comfort, but always revealed in moments of strain. Life does not present its most meaningful opportunities when we are rested, at ease, or fully prepared. It delivers them in the form of challenges, obstacles, and moments of fatigue that test not only our strength, but our willingness to engage with difficulty. The choice to continue despite tiredness is not merely about completing a task. It is an act of revealing character, building resilience, and cultivating the inner momentum that carries you far beyond what you once imagined possible. When fatigue sets in, it is tempting to see it as a verdict, a stopping point, a line that cannot be crossed. Yet this is an illusion. The sensation of tiredness is real, but it is a signal, not a limitation. It calls for awareness, for focus, and for deliberate engagement. The moment you decide to act, despite this signal, you are exercising a profound principle. Persistence is not the absence of struggle, but the choice to engage with struggle. The body, mind, and spirit respond in unison when this choice is made, unlocking reserves of strength, energy, and determination that remain hidden to those who yield at the first sign of difficulty. Persistence in the face of fatigue is an exercise in trust. Trust in the body's resilience, trust in the mind's capacity to adapt, and trust in the process itself. Every step taken when tired demonstrates that limits are negotiable, that energy can be cultivated through action, and that momentum grows in proportion to the courage to move forward. The mind often magnifies weakness, projecting exhaustion as insurmountable. By acting despite this projection, you teach the mind a new reality, that endurance is possible, that struggle is temporary, and that effort generates not only results but energy itself. Persistence, then, becomes both a teacher and a revelation. There is also a rhythm inherent in persistence. When you continue despite tiredness, each action builds upon the last, creating a current that sustains itself. The first step is always the heaviest, the first moment of motion the most difficult. Yet, as each subsequent movement follows, energy begins to flow, fatigue becomes manageable, and the mind recalibrates its perception of limitation. This rhythm, once established, is self-reinforcing. Momentum grows quietly but inexorably, transforming what was once exhausting into an experience of forward motion, clarity, and empowerment. In this way, persistence converts resistance into rhythm, struggle into flow, and effort into expansion. Persistence is a dialogue with reality. Life does not wait for readiness, comfort, or ideal conditions. The choice to act when tired is a form of alignment with the way existence unfolds. Each deliberate action, taken in spite of resistance, demonstrates an understanding that growth emerges in motion, not in hesitation. By choosing to engage consistently, even when the mind or body protests, you learn to inhabit your own power, to trust your capacity, and to move in harmony with the subtle currents that propel life forward. Persistence, in this sense, is not merely physical or mental. It is an existential commitment to presence, attention, and intentional action. The act of persisting despite fatigue also cultivates clarity. The mind, unclouded by the pursuit of immediate ease, perceives obstacles with greater accuracy, recognizes solutions more readily, and engages with challenges with creativity and focus. Fatigue, when embraced, heightens awareness rather than diminishing it. Each moment of continued effort, each step taken despite discomfort, trains the mind to distinguish between temporary sensation and true limitation. You learn to act with precision, not reaction, to move with intention, not impulse, and to persist with awareness, not blind force. Persistence also fosters resilience, the kind that endures beyond the immediate challenge. The strength cultivated through continued effort in moments of tiredness is not fleeting. It becomes a lasting quality, a resource to draw upon in future struggles. Each instance of pushing forward reinforces the belief in your capacity to overcome, gradually transforming the experience of difficulty into a source of confidence and inner power. What once seemed insurmountable is rendered approachable, and the act of persistence becomes its own reward. Choosing to keep going when tired is a declaration of alignment with purpose, potential, and the deeper flow of life. It is an acknowledgement that energy is not fixed, that strength is discovered through engagement, and that true growth occurs at the edge of perceived limitation. Persistence transforms fatigue from a barrier into a guide, revealing the hidden capacities of the mind, body, and spirit. The individual who learns to act in this way discovers that the power to continue is always greater than the weight of temporary tiredness, and that momentum, resilience, and mastery emerge naturally from the consistent practice of moving forward. Persistence is not merely a tactic for achieving goals. It is a philosophy, a lived practice, and a principle of life itself. Every step taken when the mind and body plead for rest is a revelation of strength, a cultivation of energy, and a testament to the human capacity to transcend limitation. In this ongoing engagement, fatigue loses its dominion, struggle becomes a teacher, and the act of moving forward, even when tired, reveals the depth of potential that exists in every moment of deliberate action. And so, when we step back and reflect on the journey we have explored together, a profound truth emerges. The path of persistence, even in the presence of fatigue, is not merely about accomplishing tasks or reaching destinations. It is about discovering the hidden strength within ourselves. Every challenge faced, every step taken when the body and mind urge surrender, every act of purpose-driven effort accumulates into a current far greater than any single moment of willpower. Life rewards not the absence of struggle, but the courage to engage with it, to move forward when ease tempts you to pause, and to embrace discomfort as a teacher rather than a barrier. Persistence transforms perception. What once seemed heavy, impossible, or draining becomes manageable, even energizing when we act with intention and align effort with meaning. Momentum is born in these moments of continued action, a quiet force that carries us forward beyond the limitations imagined by the mind. Struggle, fatigue, and resistance are not enemies, they are signals, guides, and mirrors, reflecting the potential we possess. Every act of persistence reshapes the mind-body dialogue, strengthens energy, and teaches that endurance is cultivated, not discovered by chance. Purpose is the compass that directs this journey. It allows effort to transcend the sensation of tiredness, giving every movement significance and every step a sense of direction. Energy flows where attention goes, and the alignment of mind, body, and intention produces a vitality that defies the immediate perception of limitation. The act of keeping going, even when difficult, builds resilience, cultivates clarity, and reveals the untapped capacities within ourselves. In this process, growth is not merely a goal. It becomes the experience of life itself. The power to continue is always greater than the weight of temporary exhaustion. Each challenge faced, each moment endured, each deliberate action strengthens the current of momentum and opens the door to transformation. By choosing persistence over surrender, by acting with purpose despite fatigue, we discover not only the capacity to achieve, but the profound truth that life's greatest strength emerges in the embrace of struggle. In the dance between resistance and action, between tiredness and movement, we find the essence of resilience, the rhythm of growth, and the limitless potential that lies within every moment we choose to keep going. This is the lesson. Life flows, momentum builds, and transformation unfolds, not in moments of comfort, but in the deliberate choice to move forward when the mind and body resist. To keep going, even when tired, is to awaken the extraordinary within the ordinary, to find strength in struggle, and to participate fully in the unfolding of your own power. The journey itself becomes the reward, and in that journey, persistence reveals the depth, vitality, and resilience that define the human spirit.